Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Sports Porch, Sports Bedroom at this point, whatever you want to call it. And welcome back to week 4 of NFL predictions. So last week was obviously week 3. This week is now week 4. So as you could probably tell, this will be a weekly thing going forward. So before we go over this week's predictions, let's go ahead and take a look at how I did last week. So last week I went 12 for 16. I got 4 predictions wrong. The first of those being Cincinnati versus Philly. Man, I don't know what Philly needs to do at this point. It's not looking good for them. Then after that, I also got wrong the Bears versus the Falcons. For some reason, I put my trust in the Falcons. Couldn't quite tell you why. And then after that, the next one I got wrong was Carolina versus the Chargers. Now, this is a prediction I had sort of, I don't want to say I saw it coming, but I knew if there was any prediction here that I made that would be wrong, it would be this one, because I wasn't quite sure of how to think of the Chargers last week with Justin Herbert. And now this week that we got a defense that sort of prepared for them. They sort of, I don't want to say they got humbled, but I mean, they were one play away from winning the game. You know, that hook and ladder didn't quite work out for them, but we'll see how they do this week against their opponent. And then the last 2 that I got wrong was Detroit against Arizona. I'm not sure who could have seen this coming. And then the last one I had wrong was Kansas City versus Baltimore. I picked Baltimore to win this, and that definitely did not happen with them. So now that we've gone over last week's scores, as you can see here, back again in the same format. Once again, my school is doing this Pick'ems contest. And without further ado, let's get right into it and start at the top. So tonight's game, Broncos versus Jets. And I just have to say really quick, this is one of the worst football games we're going to see all year. The Broncos are putting out basically their third stringer, I believe. And the Jets are the Jets, and they stink at the moment. And just because of the fact that they still stink and that they are still the Jets, I'm going to go with Denver to win this by 10 points, even with a third-string quarterback in the game. That's how little I believe in the Jets at this point. Next up, Vikings versus Texans. This is probably one of the harder ones to judge from this week, mainly because both teams have done really bad to start the season off. Both of these teams are starting off 0-3, and only one of their games for both teams have been remotely close. Last week, the Texans were within 7 points to the Steelers, and as well, the Vikings came within 1 point of the Titans. So both of these teams coming into this game, a lot on the line here, getting the first win of the season. So who do I think is going to win it? As much as I hate to put my faith in them, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. And the main reason for that is because they have Deshaun Watson on their team. The man is unbelievable. He does great things with the football. And I trust in their quarterback more than I trust in Kirk Cousins, frankly. So I'm going to go with the Texans by a field goal to win this game. Next up, Saints versus Lions. Last week with the Saints, we saw a bit of a humbling in the form of the Packers. Although I think that teams are starting to figure out that Drew Brees can't throw the football down the field anymore. And as sad as that is to say, it's frankly true. You know, especially without Michael Thomas there. I do believe he's coming back this week. But it's really unfortunate for them, especially for Drew Brees. He's one of the best to ever do it, Hall of Famer for sure. And even with all of these things happening, you still have to go with the Saints because the Lions suck and they don't know what they're doing. So I have the Saints winning this game by 10 to 14 points. Next up, Ravens versus the football team. This is a pretty easy one. I'm going to go with the Ravens. Now, the Ravens got beat last week by Kansas City pretty well handedly. The whole game they were getting dominated, but that doesn't really matter that much to me. If anything, I think that was a very healthy win for them. That was sort of a wake-up call. I'm glad they got this defeat out of the way earlier in the season so they can go look at that game, look at the film, be like, okay, what did we do wrong here? And go from there. So That, and they're facing off against the football team, and the fact that the football team is missing Chase Young again this week leads me to pick the Ravens in this game by 14 points. Next up is the Cardinals versus the Panthers, and as I said earlier about the Cardinals, they had a bit of a hiccup against the Lions. Kyler Murray looked pretty poor in that game, to say the least. He threw 3 interceptions that game. But with all that said, they only lost on a last-minute field goal by the Lions. And I think that while the Panthers did win last week, that was against Justin Herbert, and I don't think that Herbert is quite the quarterback or the offense, really, that Kyler Murray has. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the Cardinals here, getting a bounce-back win by 10 points. Next up is the Colts versus the Bears. We have what I consider contenders versus pretenders here. And you could probably figure out which is which by last week. Last week, the Bears came back from a 15-point deficit, 16-point deficit against the Falcons, who, well, we'll talk about them later. And this to me is very easy. I'm going to pick the Colts. The Colts have just looked a lot better coming into the year. And while the Bears have sort of been going by, sort of scraping by and clawing their way into these wins, the Colts just beat the Jets fairly easily. They also beat the Vikings 28-11 the week before that. And I think when they lost week 1 against the Jaguars, that was their sort of wake-up win. And I think this happens to teams at least once in a season. They always have a trap game. There's always one game where there's an upset to a team that you shouldn't be losing to. And this just so happened to happen to the Colts in that first game. And when this trap game happens, this to me is sort of a wake-up call. And the teams go back through that game, they look at their film, see what they did wrong, and then make adjustments accordingly. And for the Colts, that came in week 1. They've looked good since then. So I'm going to go with the Colts by 10 points against Nick Foles and the Bears. Also, by the way, very glad Trubisky got benched. I'm not glad to see him lose his starting job. I'm never glad when somebody loses their job like that, but the man was playing above his pay grade, even with that rookie contract. So it'll be interesting to see where the Bears go from here. Do they take a quarterback in the draft this year? Who knows? We'll talk about maybe that into another video. But for now, let's move on to the next one. And the next one is the Seahawks versus the Dolphins. So the Seattle team has looked like the Super Bowl favorite coming out of the NFC so far this season. They've looked excellent. Russell Wilson has lit the world on fire. Tyler Lockett has been really good. DK Metcalf, even though he dropped or let that guy punch the ball out of the end zone. They just won a really tough game against the Cowboys. Russell Wilson led them back in that win in the fourth quarter. And I think that the Seahawks are riding all types of highs right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Seahawks to win this game by 10 points versus the Miami Dolphins. Next up, we have the Chargers versus the Buccaneers. And I think this one is fairly straightforward. I'm going to pick Tampa Bay here. They've actually gotten out to a sneakily good start to the season ever since that first week loss against the Saints. Now, granted, their next 2 wins were against the Panthers, who are not a very good football team right now, and the Broncos, who were playing with basically all of their team in the hospital. But I do think that their defense has looked really good. You've got Shaq Barrett and Vita Vea on that front line doing really good things. You've also got this offense starting to really put it together. Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. And I do believe this week that they get back Chris Godwin. Let me check really quick. Okay, yep. Never mind. I was completely wrong. He's not coming back this week. But still, I think that what they have versus what the Chargers have, and especially with a rookie quarterback like Justin Herbert against a pretty solid defense in the Buccaneers, I'm going to go ahead and take the Buccaneers to win this game by 10 points. Next up, we have the Steelers versus the Titans, which, unfortunately, will not be happening because of COVID, because the players are out for this one, and the league didn't want to chance it, so they rescheduled this game to later in the year, which I think is good for both sides. So unfortunately, won't be seeing the Steelers versus the Titans. If I had to choose one, I don't know. It's a very tough matchup. They both look really good to start the year. I personally think... Hold on, let me check something really quick. So I just checked, and it looks like this game would have been at Tennessee. So I would have given the edge to the Titans barely, winning by a field goal. Next up is the Jaguars versus the Bengals. So the Jags started out the year really well, beat the Colts in that first week, and then lost their next two against the Dolphins and the Titans. The Bengals just came off of a really good-looking tie against the Philadelphia Eagles. Granted, there were some things that happened in that game that you're still looking like, yeah, the Bengals still are not a very good team, but hey, they put up a decent fight against a Philly team, which, to be fair, they've also been really bad to start the year. But if I'm going to choose a winner in this, I'm going to go with the Bengals. I really like how they look offensively. Joe Burrow has been fantastic to start the year. He's been everything you could want from him. Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, T. Higgins has now come in, presumably taking over for John Ross, who it looks like is going to be gone after this season. You've also got Joe Mixon on the ground doing great things. And I understand that their defense isn't very good, but I think that their offense will be able to make up for that a little bit and sort of give this team a boost and get them their first win. So I have the Bengals beating the Jags by a field goal. Next up is everybody's favorite two teams. We have the Cleveland Browns and the Dallas Cowboys. Last week, the Browns kind of beat up on the Washington football team, and the Cowboys lost a heartbreaker to Seattle. Russell Wilson came in and did Russell Wilson things. But even with that loss last week, I'm going to give the edge to the Cowboys. I think that they've just looked like the better football team so far. And they do have problems with their secondary. There's no denying that. They got cooked by Russell Wilson. Baker Mayfield isn't quite as good of a quarterback. And I think that the Cowboys offense is kind of chugging along right now at a pretty decent rate. Enough so where I think they can make up for some of those defensive deficiencies that we've seen from Dallas so far this year. So I'm going to give the edge to Dallas by a touchdown. Next up is the Giants versus the Rams. This is another fairly easy one. LA has looked a lot better this year after their Super Bowl hangover from last year. I don't really have much to say about this game. Devontae Freeman's going to be in at running back, so that'll be interesting to see how he slots in. But without Saquon, I think it's pretty obvious this Giants team is just kind of swimming in water this year. I'm going to go with the Rams by 14. Next up is the Bills versus the Raiders. So this is another one that I think is pretty straightforward. The Bills have been playing some of the best football we've seen this year, honestly. Josh Allen can be considered an MVP candidate at this point in the year. I don't think that's outlandish to say at all. The offense has basically been running through him, and I don't think the Raiders' defense is quite good enough to compete with Josh Allen and the Bills, so I'm going to take the Bills by 10 points. Next up is probably the most exciting matchup on the entire schedule of games this week. We have the Patriots going up against the Chiefs. Both of these teams have been very good to start the year. Cam Newton has come out and basically proved everybody wrong who thought that he was done, washed, whatever the case may be. He's really revitalized himself with the Patriots. And I think a large part of that is due to Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, and basically the whole Patriot way. And just, it always seems they either get the best out of their players or let them go. There seems to be no in-between with the Patriots, and it appears that it's the case this year, and it looks like they're on their way to an 11 or 12 win season. As for the Chiefs, we know what they're all about. They just got done whooping on the Ravens last week. It really wasn't even a contest, and the Ravens are one of the best, if not the best defense in the league, and they completely shredded them. So it's going to be interesting to see in this game what they can do against this Patriots defense, which is always very good, even though they're still missing some guys this year from opt-outs and things of that nature. But there's one reason why I'm giving the Chiefs the advantage in this one, and that is because they are at Arrowhead. Arrowhead is letting fans into the game, so there's going to be a little bit of a home field advantage there, and I just like teams who play at home anyway. So because of that, I have the Chiefs beating the Patriots by a field goal. Next up is another ugly one. I recommend nobody watch this game, and that is the 49ers versus the Eagles. So both of these teams are basically putting out their third stringers for this game. The 49ers are missing D Ford. It looks like he's going to go on the IR. They're still missing Jimmy G. George Kittle still questionable. Jerick McKinnon as well. Emmanuel Mosey had a concussion. Raheem Mostert is out. Jordan Reed is now out for the year. Poor guy. He doesn't get a concussion. He tears his ACL this time. They have so many guys who are just hurt, and it's ridiculous, honestly. Now, the exact same can be said for Philly. Fletcher Cox, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, Jason Peters, Miles Sanders. So many guys missing for both teams. Please, if you want to save your eyeballs, do not watch this game this weekend. These two teams are going to be very hard to watch. And you know what? Even with the 49ers not having Jimmy G, not having Raheem Mostert, basically not even having an offense, it seems, on the field, I'm still going to pick them to win this game. And the reason is because the Eagles suck. The Eagles are so bad to start the year. I don't know what needs to change. I don't know if it's Doug Peterson, maybe. If potentially it's Carson Wentz's fault. He's looked really bad to start the year. I'm not denying that, but I'm not sure if he's the whole problem with that team. But I'm going to take the 49ers by a touchdown in this. If they had their full strength roster, it wouldn't even be close. And last but certainly not least, we have my Green Bay Packers against the Falcons. This one is way too easy of a pick. The Falcons look lost, honestly. I don't know what they can do besides getting rid of everyone to stop their problems. I mean, they literally have to get rid of Dan Quinn. They have to get rid of all their defense, basically. Like, their offense is still doing fairly well, but mentally, that defense is not there anymore. They've gone out and lost back-to-back weeks, is it? They've lost 15-point leads in the fourth quarter. That's just unacceptable at this level. Dan Quinn needs to go. It just sucks because last year it seemed like he'd won his job back when that whole debacle went down, where they started out the year really bad and then he sort of brought them back. That hasn't happened this year. And the Packers offense is too good. This Packer team looks like they're another potential Super Bowl favorite out of the NFC. Their defense has been pretty solid. Their offensive lines looked really good. Aaron Rodgers is up there in the MVP debates, as well as Aaron Jones. They both looked really good. And this offense in its second year is humming along at a very nice pace. I'm going to go Packers by 14 points. Man, the Falcons need to blow it up. So there you guys have it. There are my Week 4 predictions for the NFL. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who do you think's going to win tonight in that sleeper of a matchup between the Jets and the Broncos? What are some of your hot takes for this weekend? Leave them below in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Do all that good stuff. My name is Jeffrey Anderson. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will see you guys later.